Yeah.
But the biggest opposition came from officials within the department who were trying to place the CPA under administration on behalf of a local political elite who felt that they weren't getting their lion's share of the benefits.
Yes.
Nasty situation, threats of public violence, having to even employ security guards to even call a general meeting. And basically a bunch of thugs being supported by the department.
I mean, the government buys land for Matsamo CPA worth over R1 billion, but transfers nothing in grants for over 10 years. Now you're sitting with this 1 billion asset, and it needs you to invest in it immediately. Now, for 10 years, you're applying for grants, you're not getting a cent.
I like the idea of bringing the youth in, training them up, letting them become active on the CPA for administration. Get them trained to take minutes, update membership lists, asset registries, things like that. And let's start also mixing up the land. It doesn't just all have to be cattle or millies or whatever. It can also have mixed land use, commercial, tourism, and be flexible. So I think we need a bit more flexibility, but I also think the department needs to delegate, decentralize again, and get delivery moving on the ground.
Welcome, everybody. This is our first episode in 2025. We're starting off with a very important matter of land reform. President Cyril Ramaphosa signed off the Communal Property Association Amendment Act in October last year. Now we're looking into it. Basically, the main question is, after the signing of this act, are land reform beneficiaries the real owners of the land or not? We're going to be analyzing how it's going to affect communal property associations. These associations are basically holding the land on behalf of communities, land reform beneficiaries. I have two guests, a consultant, somebody who has worked with land reform beneficiaries, assisting communities in Mpumalanga and even beyond. Chris Williams, welcome.
Thank you, Sizwe.
Yeah, and then I also have a member of the Matsamo Communal Property Association, Advocate Bernard Shabangu. Welcome, sir.
Hey, good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Thanks a lot. I'll start off with you. You are a member of you are in the executive of the Communal Property Association, Matsamo. Just briefly, because I understand it's one of the one of the few successful CPAs. There's a problem in the country of CPAs that are dysfunctional, basically, and the land is lying fallow. It's not making any profit for the communities. You are one example where things are still working. Can you tell us a bit about Matsamo? How much land do you own? Where is it? How much is it worth? What have you been doing? Just briefly, so that people understand as we go on with the conversation that we're talking to somebody who really knows what he's talking about.
No, thank you so much, Sizwe, and good afternoon once again to your listeners. Indeed, we are Matsamo CPA. We were launched in 2007 after the claims were filed in 1998, and we've been running since 2007 until today. Land parcels totaling about 14,000 hectares were transferred to us. We are mainly producing a lot of cane to the RCL sugar mill in Malalan, but we're also doing a bit of export for our citrus to Asia, European countries. Currently, our staff is over 5,000, but we also have quite a number of contracts that are also employing their own staff as well. We are advised at this point that the land that we currently control is over R1 billion, but we're also in the process now to see how we can diversify it, because agriculture alone has been the main, product that we're focusing on in the CPA. But we're looking now to say, are there other things beyond agriculture that we can look at? But we're also identifying skills gaps in the community, because Matsamo is a rural community in Mpumalanga based in Komazi. We have got quite a lot of energetic young people in that space, but we've noted that most of them are lacking the skills that they require in order to make a meaningful contribution in agriculture. So we're training most of them, paying their university fees and making sure that they are sent to the best colleges. We've now trained over 90 of them.
From the money
that is made that we make from the operation.
Okay.
We're training them every year. We're taking up, but we're focusing mainly on skills that we can use in agriculture. But now that we're diversifying into renewable energy with the partnerships we're trying to forge with the gas power generators, and we're also running a hydropower station down there. We need engineers that can run these mega structures that are going to contribute. Currently, with the hydropower that we have, we're able to supply about 40% of our energy needs. But we need to do more. That's why we've gone into the partnership with the Kanyazwe Flexi Power to establish the 25 billion gas power plant in the farm, and we will need quite a bit of engineers there to make sure that those machines, as they continue to operate, they are operated by beneficiaries and children of the beneficiaries of Matsamo CPA.
Okay, no, that is good. From where I'm sitting, so to speak, you're sitting on a gold mine. Basically. Yeah. But now the important question, just to get to the to the crux of the matter here, as the CPA, are you owning the land? Like, are you real owners? Can you, what is the title deed saying? Can you use the land to generate, to ask for a loan from a bank, for instance? Can you sell the land?
Yeah. Look, I must say that perhaps we must appreciate what the President and our national government have done, really to review the Communal Property Association Act as it was, because the way it was drafted, and even now the amendments that have been made, they continue to create a bit of a fuss around the ownership and control of the land. Yes, you've got the title deed, but then you've got quite a number of limitations that are making it quite difficult. I mean, the title deeds have got an endorsement that you are not going to use it and encumber it without the approval of your DG and all of that. So you basically have to run through a very long process, and in business, time, the turnaround time for decision making is quite important. You might find that by the time you conclude a deal that you would have signed, I mean, it's just gone, So we just think that the ownership model, as it obtains with CPAs, whilst we understand that there is, an expectation, the perspective by government to say the land that has been transferred to communities must be protected from what we all know, that people will just sell the land and then they reverse the gains of land reform. But I think also these are business entities, and there needs to be the agility that's injected into the process. Otherwise, these businesses are not going to sustain themselves. And I've seen quite a number of the reforms that have been put in, quite progressive, but I think some of them really are creating a fuss for the process.
Yeah, because the main issue here, Chris, maybe you may come in now, is the white farmer who owned the land that has been given back under restitution to the Matsamo
whatsoever.
How was he using that land? Did he have the same limitations under the apartheid government, or the land was his and he could do anything he wanted with it? Even sell it if he wants to sell it, but can go to a bank and say, here is land, I need money, I want to build a pack house or something to develop the business. Chris, I'm not sure your observation here. Are people the real owners of
Thanks, Suzanne. I wouldn't say that they're not the owners, but the fact that you've got these restrictive clauses means that the ownership is qualified. And the government's done this out of concern because of the dysfunctionality of many of the land reform projects in the restitution, redistribution, and tenure reform programs. And I don't believe that the medicine that's been applied, creating more punitive measures, is necessarily going to solve those problems. So, there have been incidences where communities have had land sold from under them without even the knowledge of the members. Things like that have happened. But there is the common law. There is enough law in this country to protect people, and I don't believe we need more state involvement. In fact, I believe for land reform to succeed in this country, we need the state to take a step back. What we've seen since I started working in the land sector in 1995 to date is a growing centralization of all functions of the department becoming more bottlenecked, regulated at the national level. So your turnaround time for delivery in terms of CPA registrations, surveying, we've now got the Office of the Valuer General. You've got the centralization. It is causing the delivery to slow down. And it's not really tangibly improving the quality of the product. So, yes, there's a problem with CPAs. Does this Amendment Act address those things? I would argue that it's not the right medicine. I would argue that the state should have gone and listened to the communities. They should listen to the business communities who they want to attract into the land reform sector, and they should have listened to practitioners and people on the ground who would have told you there's about 8 things that they could have amended in the Act, which they failed to do. Even with these amendments, just as example, a CPA may not acquire shares in a PTY limited company. It has to be registered as a public company. So only companies listed in the stock exchange can transact with the CPA, or CPA can transact with them. So, for example, if in the case of the Matsamo CPA, they want to go into business, let's say they're wanting to start a construction firm or a transfer firm, they cannot acquire shares in a company. They're going to have to lease land or establish a special purpose vehicle, and that special purpose vehicle would then be able to acquire shares in a operating company. But now you've got 3 layers of governance instead of just having one efficient one. So that's 3 boards, 3 annual reports, 3 AGMs, 3 financial statements. It's cumbersome. It's not solving the problems. I like what Bernard said about having a business-minded approach.
For sure.
People don't acquire land.
Business.
People don't acquire land for a holiday park or a holiday home. This is people's livelihoods. And business has to be nimble. People have to be able to transact efficiently. And lower the turnaround times, but secondly, the transaction costs. And for me, that's one of the key problems with this act, is that they never amended, for example, this limitation on acquiring shares in a public company. And secondly, another challenge one has with the CPAs is that the way it's been implemented by the department is that you can only register the CPA after transfer. So, in many cases, you're talking about years of negotiations, planning, subdivisions, valuations, getting business plans together. You're talking turnaround time of 3 or 4 years for a project to be settled. That's 4 years of lost business because you don't have an entity. And then only once you've got approval for the land transfer and that happens, then the CPA gets registered.
But it doesn't make sense because before the transfer already the beneficiaries are known, they've been verified, right?
They should have been,
They should have been.
But you don't acquire the land when you don't know who you are acquiring it for. Somebody must file a claim and substantiate the claim to say this.
So you should be able to register the CPA or any entity up front. When the transfer occurs, that's great. But in the meantime, you can do business. Because the way the department argues is they say, no, we don't want to register a CPA because if something goes wrong and the land isn't transferred, then it's seen as fruitless expenditure by Treasury. Well, I'm sorry, fruitless expenditure by Treasury for a few thousand rands as compared to delaying business for 4 years is just not a logical answer. It might be It might be convenient
Yeah.
for the department,
Yeah.
but it's not realistically beneficial to the community and to land reform in this country.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're talking about the delay in business, with this amendment act, the issue of leasing land, now you've got companies that are leasing from Matsamo, for instance. But now with this act, you will need, before you sign the next deal, you will need to have a permission, a government official monitoring that, reviewing the agreement,
Conditions
and decide whether you should lease or not. Yeah. And during that period, he's reviewing, or even when he's refusing, it's lost income. And is it not, I'm not sure, am I being dramatic to say it's really expropriation without compensation?
I wouldn't go that
for that period. And, you know,
it's lost income. And you know, the question is, are there officials in the department who know the real value of leases? Do they know how much grazing land is leased for in this area? Are they experts in that? Can they defend? If they're determined that the Matsamos may not lease to whoever, are they in a position to really argue that in court?
Perhaps, Grace, and maybe Sizwe, we must also appreciate what the government has done with the establishment of the CPA office, because for me, I think part of the problem government has been on the back foot has been the absence of focused talent and capability in the management of CPA matters, and we have not really seen the capacity, especially around public education, you know, which would then say to members of a CPA running a business, this is what this animal is as envisaged in the Act. And this is how, from a reporting perspective, I see now they are bringing in support for annual reporting, financial accounting, and all of that, which is all good. But I like the fact that there is now going to be some sort of a focused involvement in supporting, because at the end of the day, it's about the support. I mean, some of these projects are based in very, very rural settings where the skills that are required to do some of the work are quite lacking, and we're hoping that there will be sufficient support for that office so that then it discharges the expected, you know, support that we expect. Because I'm thinking right now we're talking about all of these things, about accountability and reporting and financial management. I mean, you go to a very, very rural area where people don't even know how to read a financial statement, let alone drafting one. And then we say, and the members of the CPA executive elected, there are no minimum requirements to say, oh, in order for you to be a member of we are fortunate in Matsamo that quite a number of the people in the executive leadership are people with some academic background. But in some communities, you find that a large proportion of the people who run these mega projects don't have the capacity. Now, if the CPA office is out of existence, as it has been for so many years until the amendment, it means that you've got the limitation of capacity. And that's why I think, for me, whilst there are a number of bad areas that may need to be improved upon as we continue, but there's also good sides to the amendment, especially as it relates to supporting the CPAs and making sure, I mean, these issues of general plans, for example, those are costly. I mean, you need to commission studies to analyze what the potential of the land is and creating those plans and so on. I mean, many communities don't have that. So you get in and you can't just draft them without involving business, without involving partners. You need to be sitting and saying who pays for that? Because those must happen at the beginning. Now, at the beginning, there's no money, there's no resource, to draft those. So I think for me, government coming in at that level, and saying we can pay for those studies and we can also create the support through the CPA office is okay. But the question that you've asked remains relevant. Are the communities really in charge? Are they owning the land? Can they make the final decision? If they can't, then
it's basically useless. But I don't know, because if you look at the figures of the failure, the figures are huge. Apparently, we have 1,740 registered CPAs, but only 10.6% of them are compliant. They hold their AGMs, submit their financial statements, and all that is needed. And I think over 2.8 million hectares are in the hands of CPAs. So, but just about 2.5 million of those hectares are not being used productively. So maybe the government can just turn around and say, that's why we know we're keeping a close oversight and meddling basically in how CPAs are run, because it's because of these failures.
So, if the department was manufacturing motor vehicles and 90% of the motor vehicles started to rattle and fall apart within a month, would you want to accelerate the production of those skorokoros, or would you actually go back and redesign what is flawed in the first place?
Yeah.
And so this type of amendment, it's fixing one part of the design flaw. I like the idea of a registry as well, if there's capacity. But don't go and design a BMW and then put a sewing machine engine in and expect it to work. Because there isn't the capacity now to administer 1,700 odd CPAs.
Yeah.
At the moment, that job has been dealt with by the tenure directorate.
Yeah.
Within the department.
It's limited.
They're entertaining concerned groups and dealing with conflicts and the likes. They should be dealing with tenure, which is an unresolved, major problem of land reform in this country. And instead, they're dealing with conflicts within CPAs. So having dedicated capacity would be good, but it's going to take time to get there. And again, the state should be not looking at doing it on its own.
Yeah.
One, I would have said that there should be provision made to allow for independent committee members, people that can be roped in, attorneys, accountants, auditors, to serve on the boards to bring that capacity. Second of all, and this for me I feel very strongly about, we need a generation of young company secretaries that can serve on a CPA board, take minutes, update the beneficiary registries, make sure that decisions are implemented, recorded, there's communication, there's correspondence. That's the level of capacity and skill that's needed. And that could come from within the community, not from land affairs and the department sitting in Pretoria or in a regional office. So I think, the registrar, time will tell whether it's really going to make a difference. I think it's good that at least there is a dedicated capacity, but I would rather see more investment in the communities themselves, training young people to take minutes, act in that secretarial organizational role, because how many of the CPAs can't even call a quorum meeting? Why? Because half the beneficiaries have passed away. They haven't updated the membership list for 15 years. Therefore, there isn't a quorum. Therefore, no decisions taken. And you get a moribund situation where they cannot actually go forward. And then the department's going to appoint a consultant for 300,000-400,000 rand to do beneficiary verification. And that takes 18 months and is a mess. So capacitate the community. And, those are hard skills that could be trained and invested in those CPAs.
Yeah, for sure. And is it not a concern, though? Because I've come across many land reform projects where the problem is not the CPAs so much or the community members so much, but the problem is the government officials. They divide and rule for their own interests. Now they have their own interests. We cannot hide the fact that land reform is riddled with corruption perpetrated by government officials.
See, I was involved in a very nasty situation involving the Ngonglovu CPA down in the Wild Coast. They own the Wild Coast Sun. They own the golf course.
Okay.
We had to facilitate new elections. But the biggest opposition came from officials within the department who were trying to place the CPA under administration on behalf of a local political elite who felt that they weren't getting their lion's share of the benefits. Nasty situation, threats of public violence, having to even employ security guards to even call a general meeting. And basically a bunch of thugs being supported by the department. And so, giving the department more power sometimes can lead to a situation where there's abuse. And who's checking on the so-called schoolmaster whether they're behaving themselves or not?
Yeah.
That for me is a bit. I'm cynical about it because we've had incidents like that where the officials themselves either have a vested interest or are politically inspired to intervene in cases where they should actually just not be involved.
Imagine now with this amendment, you want to take a decision on your land. The official is sitting there, is corrupt, he wants a bribe. Then he just drags the whole process. There's a lease that needs to be signed.
Or he says to you, I've had somebody's complained.
Yeah.
And according to the amendments, they don't have to disclose who the third party is because of victimization.
Exactly.
I read that one and I was really quite disturbed because of what we have been exposed to in the space, where you find that people will run to Pretoria. And sometimes you try to engage the department and you don't get feedback.
Yes.
But then those who are able to communicate with the department without being,
following protocol.
Following protocol, they immediately attended to, and immediately will get the report that no, somebody has complained.
Yeah.
And as Chris has been saying, they've been attending to consent groups.
Yeah. And you look at it and say, but we've been writing, we are the de facto, we're in the office, and we've written these many letters for you to assist the process, but they are not being responded to. But one person runs, and suddenly there's someone who's concerned, and I was thinking about it to say, but there's a great chance for abuse of process here. And I'm questioning whether the department will have the capacity to manage these floodgates that it's going to have to manage, because with the era of consent groups and all of that, the office of the registrar is going to be dealing with these faceless people who are just going to, because the one issue that you must ask is locus standi, as I understand it, where you say, is the person who claims to complain on behalf of the community the person who is a decision maker in that community or not? Because people come in there as family representatives. We are using a representative system where a family will elect one person and say, this is going to be our representative in the CPA. But you find that people who are descendants of the family representatives go there and present themselves as complainants,
as a representative of the family.
And those that are representing those families would say to you, we don't know what these kids are doing there, because we are attending the meetings. Those decisions that are being implemented by the CPA are our decisions that we're taking in a general meeting. But these ones that are being entertained right now in Komazi, even in our project, we've got someone calling himself a land reform activist. And he says he speaks for all the CPAs. He's a chairperson of all the consent groups
of different CPAs.
But he goes there and he's entertained. And the person comes into those projects, he does not even come from those communities. He comes from somewhere else, but he goes to the government officials and says, I'm now representing all the consent groups. And he's entertained. So now when we say in the Act that there is a door for such people to go to the department and be entertained as anonymous complainants, will the department have the capacity to administrate this? I was hoping that there would be a massive education drive, really to educate communities, because I think that some of the lands are lying fallow now because of the administrative mishaps in the process.
I mean, one can be very cynical and say, if I want to obstruct land reform, let's say I've got a right-wing
I want to undermine
apartheid agenda, let's say.
Just fund those guys.
Just pay for somebody to go to the department and say, no, the beneficiary list is not right. Therefore, the farm doesn't have to be sold. Now there must be an investigation. You can delay things for years. So one doesn't want that. One actually wants to see land reform speed up. But, in my experience now, you're talking 18 months to get surveying through the supply chain in the department. 18 months. I've just spent another 18 months dealing with valuations. That's 3 years of work. Now you're going to go through this process of the CPA registration only after we should be settling land reform projects within a year.
Yeah.
Like in the 90s when land reform started,
Yeah.
that was a turnaround time for every project. You had a year to get things done.
Yeah.
Now we 3 years plus, and there's no urgency by the department.
Yeah.
And I just feel that, centralizing and putting too much power and responsibility in the hands of officials is
Yeah.
problematic.
It
If
is.
we're really committed to a developmental state,
Yeah.
the state should respect people and communities and say, we trust you. Unless you show us otherwise, we give you the land to use in your best judgment.
Yeah, but you raise an issue of capacity among the government officials. Do they have the capacity? For instance, if I'm coming, I'm saying, I'm complaining, I'm from a concerned group, then they should check me. Who am I?
To have a standing in that process.
Exactly. Am I part of the beneficiaries or not? They should be able to verify that quickly.
Yeah, and also just have you, in terms of your constitution,
Have you
there's
approached
procedures
it?
for
There's
grievance.
proof, yeah.
Did you write to the chairperson? Have you actually got a
Followed
response?
the
Have you
processes.
followed internal dispute resolution processes first before running off to the department to throw a spanner in the works? And sometimes you do get an elite group that would do something like that because they either used to benefit,
Yeah.
or they hope to benefit directly from this process, or they don't want to see other people benefit if they're not eating the lion's share of things. It's like the whole story of the dog in the manger, where the dog denies all the other animals in the farm eating hay because he can't eat hay. So he sits there barking and keeping the other animals from enjoying themselves. You get that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
No, the process is vulnerable. Is a way vulnerable for abuse, and I don't see in the act where it speaks, extensively about how the abuse of process will be managed. We've seen, Chris spoke about some of the instances where you find projects placed under administration so that whoever else can benefit. And I look at the current framework, I don't see how it's going to be protected from that. In public works now, you've got the so-called construction mafia. Government has sort of gone out of its way through the law enforcement system to make sure that those mafias are dealt with as part of a process. In land reform, you can collapse it in a day. And I don't see, the safeguards in the system to say, we go. When you look at local government, there are mayors there and there are councillors. There are that are running local government. People protest every day, but you don't see the kind of descent into their space to say we're going to place a municipality under administration and take all its powers, and they are not going to do anything until somebody else. You don't get that. They allow the elected leadership of that local municipality to run their term. Their concerns are raised, yes, but then the powers of the mayor and the councillors continue to be intact. But for CPAs, a faceless person can go to an official in the department and say, I've got a complaint, but don't tell them who am I, and this is my complaint. And then a formal investigation will start. And once people in rural setups are aware, once they know that they are now a subject of a formal investigation, that unsettles business. Even investors, they don't want to transact.
There's your 25 billion rand renewable energy project gone.
They don't want to transact with people who are under investigation.
For sure.
So if we want to sabotage you as a community project, we just go and lay frivolous claims and say there's people that must be investigated for 1 and 2, and suddenly there's an investigation. And investors take flight, and then your business is gone.
Absolutely. Cyril, I think one's going to also have to look and wait and see what the regulations are.
Yeah.
Because the department is only, this act was passed now in November? October.
Yeah.
So they've still got to write the regulations.
Yeah.
And that is where the devil in the detail occurs. Because it's a bunch of officials writing regulations that will suit themselves.
Yeah.
So there's powers in this amendment in terms of subpoena and the likes.
Yeah.
They could turn around and say, well, you've got a week.
Yeah.
you've got to appear in front of us within a week, or we're subpoenaing you, facing charges in terms of the Magistrates Act. So one would have to look at those regulations very carefully. I don't know whether certain progressive legal experts in this country have looked at this act carefully and wondered whether it would pass constitutional muster. But I think there's good arguments to motivate for constitutional court challenge against this amendment on the basis of denying full rights of private property, plus executive overreach by the state into the affairs of a private entity. So one will have to wait and see about that.
Oh, that's true, especially now. I mean, when you look at the land that's procured, the land is procured for the community, so it becomes a private asset belonging to the community. But as we see it, it's almost like it's now a section of the Department of Rural Development and so on.
Exactly. I was reading a report by the Institute of Race Relations. They go as far as saying that, look, this is a bad precedent. Because now it's sort of, government can now go to banks, pension fund managers and say, look, you are not, you should not do this and this and this because it's not in your best interest. They say it's got overreaching implications.
No, that's true. But also, the other issue that I wanted to talk to Sizwe, it's the potential conflict that I see between the Land Reform Act of 96 and the Restitution Act. Because the Land Reform Act speaks about labor tenants and the rights that they might have to acquire land that is, in which they are based. So it's more like your land tenure security kind of legislation, but it also speaks to land ownership. Now you also then have the Restitution Act, which speaks about the people who what you would call dispossessed before the land became farms. Now, when we're saying that the labor tenants and the restitution beneficiaries are going to be administrated under one act. It is sort of now, and I think the biggest issue that we've been dealing with in land reform has been labor tenants who worked in quite a number of the farms that we claimed. And the labor tenants are saying, look, we want to also be members of the CPA because we were working here for some time. And the communities were saying, but you guys were not dispossessed of the land.
You were just
you came here to work, and we offered you the farmer who ran the farm offered you accommodation. So as workers, but we lost our grazing fields, we lost our homes, we lost everything that we knew. Before the dispositions happened. Now, how do you then get to have the same rights as us? And I don't think that question is sufficiently dealt with in the
you deal with labor tenants. So do you find the conflict?
There's a number of cases where communities have had land restored to them, and they often were dispossessed labor tenants who lodged a claim. But other families remained under labor tenancy on the farm, and they don't become members of the CPA. They remain as labor tenants. So I think this issue of how to assess whether restitution right is stronger than an Esther right or a labor tenant right is a very, very big problem. And I mean, there's farms in the Piet Retief area where this has happened, and labor tenants have set fire to plantations. There's been a lot of that type of thing. So on both sides, it's a very, very emotional issue because, I mean, these labor tenants, and I'm not talking about an occupier who's got Esther rights. But somebody who's for generations, their family have provided labor for a farmer. They've in exchange been given a small area of land for themselves. And now I come along as a claimant and say, Zorgumschlabe Mina is mine. And you can, and I can evict you, or I can start limiting your rights on that land. That's a very, very big cause for conflict. The thing is putting those parties in one pot.
It's a problem.
It can be. And it's one that really needs to be sorted out case by case. I don't think there can be a blanket approach. I think in some cases there have been mistakes made in terms of restoring land to claimants and ignoring the legitimate labor tenants on the farm. There are cases where there are occupiers on a farm demanding more than they are entitled to in terms of ESTA or the Labor Tenants Act. What I do think is interesting, I mean, I like the idea, as Bernard mentioned, about the having the general plans. Because in the end of the day, one would possibly be able to ripen properties if, let's say, a portion of the farm is surveyed as residential and a proper township established with residential stands and each family is allocated one or two stands for their purposes. That type of approach, it's long overdue because at the moment, it's a free-for-all. If I want to, I can go and put up my house wherever because it's communal land. There's not an area to say this is grazing, this is arable, this is high potential commercial crops. And this area we've allocated for school, and this area we've allocated for residential, 1 stand per family or 5 stands per family. And that is a way of creating wealth, that a family can actually get a title deed on their old CPA lands. I mean, I've looked at projects in Zanin, and most of the claimants are elderly. They would like to move out of places like Lenyenye and Sukmakar and whatever. They'd like to go back to their homes. But they actually need an old age home. So why don't you build an old age home? Why don't you actually take an area and say, let us build frail care, let us build single room or 2 room houses for the elderly and take care of them there, and they can own that. And each family can have a place like that. That's real land reform. Not saying, okay, once a year you're going to get the profit from the mangoes.
But now you're touching a point of family. The law, land reform law, does it assert the rights of the family now? We are members of the CPA, but now I am a family. Me and my family, and if my family and I, we want to maybe start build a shop or something, we need money. We cannot go to the bank and say, we are part of that CPA, the CPA owns this part of land, our share is so much, can you borrow us the money?
So if there was a general plan and this was zoned residential and you allowed to be issued a title deed on that residential, there should be no reason. There should be no reason why a bank couldn't accept a title deed for that portion. One would have to look at the market, but at least it's an asset for the family. And what you can do is to say, okay, well, we've got residential here, we've got 5 or 6 business sites. Let's go out and tender. Let's get competitive bids going. Let's see who wants to put up a spaza shop, a bakery, or whatever to serve the village. That would be very, very useful. But I mean, that same philosophy applies to the entire former Bantu stance. We still to this day don't sit with title deeds. And why is Land Affairs refusing to issue title deeds?
I'll tell you.
There's a lot of politics involved in that, and a lot of it's got to do with our neighboring province. But for me, that would be a significant step forward for land reform as well.
Because the whole purpose of land reform, we wanted to see a picture where a black farmer today is enjoying the benefits of owning land the same as the farmer during the apartheid.
There's a gentleman in Pitritif. He has got 2 pieces of land. One is a farm. Is a farm in a zoned area. And he has got a title deed for it. Then he's got an adjacent farm that he got from the traditional leadership. But in order for him to farm the farm that's adjacent under the traditional leadership authorization, he has to make a loan using
the other property,
because if he goes with the farm that he owns under the traditional leadership dispensation, he's not going to be given money. But those are 2 sides of the same coin, and it disadvantages. It makes it worse right now, Cesar, because I'm just thinking how now with these amendments, business will sort of struggle. And I think we've touched on it to say if for everything that you acquire especially whether it's movable property or whatever, you need to convene a community meeting to decide if you want to buy a chair or a table or any of the movable assets that you need in order to run the CPA. It means that, I'll talk about us. We are now almost 2,000 members. I must convene 2,000 members so if the business needs to buy a couple of things in a month, how many meetings must I have? And to convene these people so that you can take a decision. And I often refer to this local government to say if the mayor of a municipality wanted to buy a chair, must convene the community of that municipal area every time to get approval.
Public consultation.
It would be. I know there are public consultations that are done for the budget, but it's not everything that you acquire in a year that's in the budget. There are things that you sometimes need to acquire from time to time, especially in the farming environment. In the farming environment, things break every day. Things you need to acquire, and those assets, as you buy them, you code them. They are in the asset list. You need to learn. So I'm just saying, maybe the regulations Chris speaks about will clarify some of these areas to say, how will this be implemented in a manner that doesn't harm?
So anything above 50,000 or whatever, then you'd have to call a general meeting. That's the kind of things the regulations could talk about. But you're right. A CPA is not an efficient business entity. It's not a nimble, fast, on its feet structure that can take decisions from a commercial point of view. And I think that is a problem that we have all along, is trying to balance the ability of an entity to act commercially and make a commercial sense, and at the same time be transparent, democratic, accountable to its membership. And again, that is why a lot of people have opted for trusts, even though the disadvantage there is that, if there's a problem, we've got to have recourse in the High Court and the likes, and there's problems with the Master's Office, but at least there's a lot more ability to take decisions. And that helps with transactions as such. But look, in the end of the day, I think those challenges are ones we're going to have to come up with practical approaches to, like, for example, get a budget approved at your AGM for the next year with an ability to spend an extra 200,000 Rand without calling a general meeting, and hope that budget stretches so you don't have to go back and call it a general meeting, which is going to cost you 100,000 Rand to hold, to go and buy a table or a chair.
So what will need to happen? Seemingly it's not working. This is not working. Even this, you were talking about traditional land. It's more like that kind of permission to occupy PTO system. So it's more or less like that, where you cannot really do anything with the land that you have.
I think we really desperately need a situation where people are investing in CPA-owned properties. You mentioned there's about 2.5 million hectares of land sitting fallow. That is often high potential land. That's jobs, that's foreign exchange earnings, that's support for the local economy. We need investors in. Not to say that you need some unethical, misguided people coming in and taking advantage of communities, but setting up a fair partnership agreement, putting money in, and both parties benefiting. And I find it very difficult to think that there's an official sitting in Pretoria who's going to look at this proposal and say, this makes good business sense. This is a wise decision. The business acumen is not there within the state. You just look at South African government's state-owned enterprises, you look at the way they administer their own assets, they're not business-minded. So they don't know the value of a lease. They don't know why a shareholding is 60-40 or 45-55, and for them to be prescriptive and say, no, all of them have to be 75-25 or the likes, investors will say, you know what, I don't have this problem in Mozambique, I don't have this problem in Namibia or in Zambia or Zimbabwe. I'm going to take my money there. I'm going to put up my macadamia orchards or my citrus or whatever high-value crops. And South Africa, you know what, you're sitting there fiddling around, twiddling your thumbs, and the state wanting to intervene. We don't have time for this. And we're losing out And we desperately need our agricultural sector to grow, and it can only grow with land reform as a positive contributor.
Yeah.
Not you taking away from the sector every time there's a land reform project.
Yeah, exactly.
No, the other thing, Chris, maybe that Cesar, that we want also to point out is when we speak about agility.
Yeah.
Land reform has been the biggest talking point in this country for ages. And people have got very, very high expectations from it.
Yeah.
And it's quite sad when you look at the setup of how we're seeking to bring that expectation to life, that it does not really inspire confidence in many respects. I mean, when you look at what it takes to run a business, I mean, the government buys land for Matsamo CPA worth over R1 billion, but transfers nothing in grants for over 10 years. Now you're sitting with this 1 billion asset, and it needs you to invest in it immediately. Now, for 10 years, you're applying for grants, you're not getting a cent. And when you finally get the grant after 10 years, actually it was almost 12 years, you then get a fraction of that which you applied for 10 years ago. And now the assets, the supplies have tripled in prices. When you applied for the grant and submitted the business plans, a bag of manure costs X amount. Now it's triple that. Now you get that which is in the business plan and your application. Now I'm saying that approach has really, maybe we can say it's in part responsible for the collapse of many of the land reform projects, where we sometimes blame the communities. But when you look at the support that then gets given to them, I mean, you give someone a Lamborghini and then you give him nothing in the way of petrol money. How do they run it? And then you say, look, I bought this guy a Lamborghini, but he can't drive it.
It's the same as this Masimini project handing out maize to farmers in the Highveld in January.
Yeah.
Planting season September, October. So, you've just wasted another year of people's time.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Government is not switched on to these cycles in agriculture, for one, but secondly, the business cycles and what it takes. And, if you are now going to need to get an offer from the state of first refusal for the disposal of your CPA land, how long is that going to take? So you're slowing down the opportunities for investment, because there may be times where a small portion of land from a CPA should be transferred or sold in exchange for an asset or a share or the likes. That is a common practice. Often you even have neighbors who want to buy this piece and they'll give you water rights or they'll give you access over another piece. Those are businesses that individual title deed owners do all the time. But now you're saying, okay, right, but the minister must approve.
Yeah.
And they're going to send a delegation down there to investigate this. You're just delaying things. And for me, that is the biggest problem, is time is an enemy. And as you say, get the land. It's like getting back one leg of your trousers. You used to be naked, now you've got one leg, so you've got half your dignity left, and now you're waiting for the other leg so you can stand up in public again. And this is the problem, is that we don't have the resources. The state doesn't have the resources. But every year the department is not spending their money. So every year the Treasury takes back money and allocates it to departments that are spending, because they've made the delivery so difficult and so many hoops to jump through that in the end of the day, the amount of transfers, especially in restitution, it's trickled down to a handful per province per year. There's 3,000 outstanding claims. Those are going to take decades to solve at the rate we're going. Because one, there's no budget, two, there's no capacity, but three, the process one's following is so cumbersome and long that, and I mean, claimants have been waiting since 1998.
Yes.
We might just ask to celebrate 30 years of no delivery, And I'm not saying that in the sense of the ruling party. But I think in the end of the day, the government still wants to be big brother and hold onto the reins. And not allow people to make informed, wise decisions of their own. And yes, there will be mistakes, there will be problems. Those can be sorted out. But don't punish the majority
Yeah.
because of the few flies in the ointment as such.
Exactly. So, but in your case, as Matsamo, how do you maneuver around to survive? Because under the circumstances, you've been doing quite well. I think the deputy president even visited you guys. A good example of at least a functional CPA, and the land is really working for you guys. You are paying dividends and all that.
Yeah. No, I think we can count ourselves fortunate in a way, for the leadership that we had when the project started. Because I mean, when you look at the Amendment Act now and the new introductions that it makes, I don't think that if those were present when we started, that we would have gotten to where we got. But what we've seen with these successes is also the ability to partner. We've seen private sector partnerships as the key ingredient to a successful land reform. We've not seen a lot of government involvement, but we've seen private sector involvement, and that's what has driven the success. Because, for example, if you look at what you would require to run the RCL farms, 200 million upfront that you must put up. And in order for you to secure that loan, if you need a loan, you need somebody to secure it and say this, and you can't put the land as security. Somebody must stand up and say, I am putting my balance sheet, I'm putting my loan as security. Then the money then gets released. We've just completed an 80 million upgrade into our pack house now. Somebody has had to secure that loan. And if really we were reliant on the grant support from government, it could not have happened. And I think we can be grateful for the leadership insight, but also the private sector participation, which has resulted in the many successes we have seen in the CPA. And I think we have been spoken to by the Deputy President, and he says, look, we think that you guys must be a national template or pilot that can sort of share your learnings with other CPAs in the country. And we've opened our doors as a CPA to say, look, we are eager. I mean, there's people like Chris as well. We're all eager to share our learnings in the space and really to strengthen land reform, even under the currently constrained environment. I think there's a lot that we can contribute to enrich the discussion around land reform and transformation as well.
Okay. Chris, last word?
Well, Cizwe, this land reform program in South Africa is critical for South Africa's long-term stability, growth. We've got to get it right. We've got to make sure that it's just and it's fair, but that justice and fairness also requires it to be timeless. You can't have a situation where people have been claiming land since 1998 and are still waiting. That's not justice. And I think more effort should be given to fostering an environment where a CPA like Matsamo can plug into existing successful supply chains and production chains. Rather than saying, okay, CPAs, here's your land, go and look for money and go and find whatever opportunities you can, and good luck to you. And we'll come back to you when there's a problem and there's a concerned group knocking on our door, and just leave the situation alone. I like the idea of bringing the youth in, training them up, letting them become active on the CPA for administration. Get them trained to take minutes, update membership lists, asset registries, things like that. And let's start also mixing up the land. It doesn't just all have to be cattle or millies or whatever. It can also have mixed land use, commercial, tourism, and be flexible. So I think we need a bit more flexibility, but I also think the department needs to delegate, decentralize again, and get delivery moving on the ground, because at the moment there's bottlenecks. And I'm afraid that this new act or this amendment to the CPA Act is going to be another bottleneck and an impediment to delivery. And we can ill afford that.
Maybe it's just to latch on what Chris is saying. You see, this decentralization creates capacity at the municipal level. Have partnerships of some sort, so that then people in Mkondo must have a land reform office there. If there's people in Mbombela, they must, at least Mbombela has got the provincial office. But you can imagine someone who's in Verena, in Donalton, somewhere
It's a long way.
in Kwandebele, far away from the provincial office, and it takes time for the officials to travel there and to address the daily issues. But if there are a couple of, we've got 5 or 10 officers stationed in a municipal office, they are administrating 33 CPAs in that space.
Yeah.
Every day there's support, and
and delegation. I mean, why do we only have one Chief Land Claims Commissioner? We
Yeah.
used to have regional land claims commissioners.
Yeah.
Why can't we have delegations to the provincial officers to approve transactions up to 10 or 15 million without having to go through this whole process of approvals up to the minister for a simple transaction like that?
Yeah.
Yes, there can be abuse, but there can also be fast tracking of land reform.
For sure.
And I
For
think
sure.
one needs both. One does need checks and balances, but one also needs to trust in the process that you've established.
Yeah. Okay, there we have it, gentlemen. Hey, it seems like it's a long way to go, but we don't have to despair. We still have that partial ownership of the land, even if it's not. You said it's qualified.
So now your trouser's got a hole in it. You're gonna have to patch that one up.
Yeah, so there you have it. Hopefully, man, we need land reform to work. We need to see those lands producing food for us, creating the jobs, as you said, Chris, contributing to the economy. We want to see those ecotourism projects bringing up energy projects like Matsamo, you guys are doing, but all of that, they need those bottlenecks to be, opened up. Yeah, on that note, thanks a lot. Don't forget to read on the peopleseye.co.za. There are many stories, even this one could be covered there. Don't forget to subscribe. If you are interested to advertise, the numbers are on the screen and the email is on the screen, is showing. You will have to contact us. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you, Cesar.
Thank you.
Thanks,